we are not a tobacco product. We are a smoking alternative and a harm reduction product, and so it does definitely need its own definition, even if it is controlled still by tobacco control.
Now, you're one of the larger e-juice manufacturers in Canada, right?
Yeah, we were one of the first 3 to open up in Canada. So we were one of the grandfathers of the industry. We jumped on board with the ECTA right away when they founded. We were very proud to be that part of it. That was something very important for us as well, because there was no regulation set by the government for our industry, and it's a harm reduction product to get you off of tobacco. There is an age of majority with that. It's not appropriate for kids to be getting a hold of it. The age of majority, 19 plus, we've always enforced that as a rule in our company, as well as ECTA standards. But then there's a lot of other things as well, that any consumer product in Canada must have certain labeling requirements, and it is also should be tested.
For mom out there in the living room has really no idea about e-cigarettes and vaping, except for what they hear in traditional media.
Right.
What's your message to mom about the quality of Canadian e-juice and your e-juice?
Canada's e-juice by far it seems to be leading the world in being the most compliant to regulations that should be followed.
Can you say it's safe?
I could say that the UK government announced that they feel is 95% safer than tobacco products. Myself, I would rather not make a claim, but I will say when they have said that, I've felt that for years. But it's nice to have a government in the world state that openly, because Canada has been so backwards about trying to restrict something that helps people get off of tobacco, which is killing them.
China does get a bum rap, right?
Well, there's a lot less government regulations there on quality standards and assurance, or they're not enforced as well as they are here in North America or Europe. So what happens there a lot is they'll manufacture it. Some companies will cut corners. There's ones like Inokin and Kanger, Joytech, Janty. They go out of their way to be at a standard that's at par with North America and Europe. And that's really impressive. That's why they are some of the biggest manufacturers of hardware in the world. So I have a huge amount of respect to those type of manufacturers in China that do their due diligence.
The founders of Inokin have been involved in e-cigarette technology for about 7 years, which is almost from the very beginning. Inokin was founded 5 years ago with the goal of improving the technology and making high-quality devices available to people around the world.
You're a Canadian, but you represent a Chinese company.
Yes, I'm from Toronto originally, but I moved to China quite a few years ago, and then I stayed and continued working because I have such high hopes and love for this industry and for this technology.
I know for a lot of people it might be a bit confusing to hear the word technology when it's applied to something that they think is a cigarette.
It's not a cigarette, and we don't believe it's a tobacco product as well. It's a new kind of technology that uses aerosol to deliver flavors and also different levels of nicotine to the users.
So it's a harm reduction device. Explain that.
Well, that's the whole point. It's not combustion, it's aerosol. And we can control, even with temperature, what the output from the tank, from the device is for the user.
We've interviewed people on our show like David Sweener, who talks a lot about how it's not the nicotine that kills in a cigarette, it's the delivery system. And I guess, in all intents and purposes, you're our delivery system of nicotine.
Yes, absolutely. The devices use a coil system and a wicking system and power to heat up the liquid, which then turns into an aerosol, which is then inhaled and used. And it's not combustion, like I said, so there's no burning, and then we can limit any of the toxins that are potentially in the aerosol, and we test for these toxins and we test for metals to ensure the quality of the vapor.
How rigorous is your testing, and what have you learned from that?
Well, we test with different independent third-party labs in both America and in Europe for regulations there. And the most important thing is the supply chain, is auditing, making sure the supply chain is keeping the materials that we use up to the highest standards as possible.
So people, can they trust that coming from the manufacturer?
Well, it's from the testing labs. So the reports that we publish are from these independent testing labs, which we're also using for our own stewardship as well. And we share the protocols that we've been developing with regulators and with the market, with vapors, so that we can discover the maximum harm reduction with these new technologies.
When it comes to the regulations that we're seeing drop in the US and the EU and coming through here in Canada, what are your thoughts on that? What's the company's thoughts on that?
What we must do is continue to improve the devices and technology and to share everything we learn with the FDA. And Inokin and other top manufacturers are helping fund Sevia USA, which are in talks with the FDA and other groups to share this information. We've joined and donated funds to the CVA, the Canadian Vaping Association, in hopes of continuing dialogue with Health Canada and regulators.
For all those vapors out there that feel that government's coming in and crushing the industry, and that the industry might be in peril, it might be gone, what kind of reassuring message, if there is one, Canada can provide?
Well, it won't be gone. The technology will continue to be developed around the world, and with every success story, then it's more power for all of us as well. And I have high hopes that the Canadian regulators, that the government will listen to science and will listen to research, and that dialogue will be opened with us so that we can continue vaping in Canada.
You just won a couple of awards. Tell us about that.
Yeah, in Europe, there's a Vape Around Awards. It was the first of its kind. You know, a great event. Thousands of companies from the U.S. entered in on it. I entered my juice. I took home 3 awards, got nominated for 5. Yeah, it was great. Shocking. I mean, you know, a newer Canadian company. You know, I'm doing good up here, and yeah, it was great.
So it is a rags to riches story, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to someone earlier today. 2 years ago today, I was going around to corner stores, you know, collecting my consignment money to buy food to live and try to build this company, and now I got this.
So 2 years later, being one of the guys, you know, really building this industry, we're seeing a lot of regulations coming down. What do you think about that?
I'm all for regulation in terms of, you know, a quality product, you know, people doing things right, you know, following, you know, it needs to be regulated. But the problem is, you know, even in Europe, you know, the people regulating it don't know how to regulate it. So, you know, how can they put all these things into effect when they don't really know anything behind it? We're proceeding, we're making it happen. You know, I still want to do business in Europe, so I'm going to do what they want. Is it going to work? We don't know. We just got to wait and see. The U.S., they come up with these. The FDA comes up with this, you know, big piece on what they want, which is crazy. You know, the way I see it is, if that actually goes into effect, what's going to happen? It's a little too you can't go that extreme and expect it to be okay. And everything costs money, so if you got to pay to get your flavors regulated to make sure it's up to Canadian standard, you know, I mean, you go to a store to buy a can of pop, I mean, you buy a cup of coffee, it's all regulated. I mean, why shouldn't this be regulated?
As one of the largest e-juice manufacturers, obviously in Canada and growing in the world, what's your message to, say, Health Canada, the provincial regulatory authorities, the health ministries? What's your message?
I mean, this is an industry that's not going away. It is never going away. So, you know, work with us to basically make it happen.